Welcome to HIPE Stories, a show about high impact Pinoy entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs based in the Philippines who have the most disruptive ideas, go on to scale their business to a big success, and then pay it forward by helping the next generation of entrepreneurs, unleashing a massive economic multiplier effect. And with us today, we're very lucky to have the very charming, the very affable, the very dynamic Roland Ros, founder of Kumu. Welcome to the show, Roland.
Hey, thanks. Welcome.
Yeah, so I thought what we do today, right, is we're just going to follow this structure,
Okay.
dissecting what a high impact entrepreneur is, right? So we're going to talk about the idea. Then we're going to talk about your scale up journey. Then we're going to talk about paying it forward, if that's okay. So let's start with the idea.
Yes.
And go as far back as you want, right?
Far
With
back.
How this idea started to form in your head.
Yeah,
Kumu.
idea-wise, it really does start with that dream. Growing up, I was born and raised in Los Angeles to a single mom. It was just the three of us, me, my mom, and my brother. And, I was always curious about the Filipino side of my identity. She would be cooking adobo, sinigang, things like that. And going into college, I was always curious about, what it meant to be Filipino. And so I studied at UC Santa Barbara, and it was
Nice campus.
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful campus just right on the beach.
Yeah.
I always joke that it's like if the UP had a campus in Boracay or something like that.
How'd you get anything done? I mean, I'd be out all day. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think going to school there helped me more from a social intelligence perspective than more from a critical thinking perspective. And one of those programs was they're actually the headquarters of the study abroad program for all of the UCs. And one of the campuses was the Philippines.
Yeah.
And all my classmates were wanting to go to Tokyo, Barcelona, Paris, and I was like, guys, I'm going to the Philippines.
Yeah.
And no one wanted to go with me. And I was like, okay, fine, I'm just going. And so of all the campuses, it was a partnership with UP Los Baños. And there was something beautiful about, staying in a campus on Mount Makiling, being out in the province. And it was a life-changing experience where I knew in my heart that I wanted to be in the Philippines more than I wanted to be back home in Los Angeles.
You didn't have to plant rice, did you?
No, but we did. The great-granddaughter of Otley Bayer was one of our teachers.
Bayer Aspirin.
Or Bayer, Otley Bayer, the archaeologist.
Okay.
And I think, he's an archaeologist who is actually based up north. And she's actually from Banawe and would actually tell us these stories, about her family's history and the rice terraces and those types of things.
Yeah.
And I just knew that after graduating, that's what I wanted to do. But again, that's one of the most important things of dreams and never giving up on those dreams, because from a college student up to the point of starting Kumu was mainly this kind of 19-year journey of failing and never giving up, constantly trying things to do things in the Philippines and never giving up. And that's was really what formed that foundation. And, graduating from college, I was more of an activist.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, very quickly, I knew I didn't have the resources to do something. And so I discovered entrepreneurship, moved to San Francisco, became an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And, solved a problem for internet marketers to the point that it was actually worth an exit. And so when we sold that business, I finally had the resources to go back home.
And then you started making trips to the Philippines, right?
Yes. So I was going back and forth. I was in the Philippines. A lot of that was, I had a mentor. He had written a book called Purpose Driven Life. His name's Pastor Rick Warren.
Who hasn't heard, right? I have that book. I've read that book.
I read that book. It was a life-changing experience reading that. And after selling the business, I moved to Orange County. And when I was exposed to this initiative that he had called the Peace Plan, I was really helping and doing a lot of that work, where it was getting involved in poverty alleviation projects in Tondo, anti-sex trafficking projects in Olongapo and Angeles, and clean water projects in Rizal. And so I would go back and forth doing nonprofit work in the Philippines, and then going back home to the U.S. engaging in technology and entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And it was actually during that back and forth process I met Rexy, because he was doing something while he was a student at Brown.
Rexy, your co-founder.
Yeah. Rexy, he's the kindest, most intelligent person, most empathetic. He's just a great person. And when I first met him, he was telling me about this dream of how he's taking Filipino students from all around the world. He was taking students from where he was going to school at Brown, students from Harvard, Stanford, Georgetown, University of California, take him to the Philippines on these 2-month-long internships. And then when I was witnessing the life-changing experiences that they went through, it reminded me of the life-changing experiences that I went through.
Yeah.
And so that really started kind of forming this dream about, what could we do engaging the Filipino diaspora to have a beneficial impact on the Philippines.
Right.
Not in that like messianic kind of way that kind of annoys me sometimes with certain folks who come from Western countries, like, oh, I come here to save the Philippines. But what Rexy taught me was this side-by-side approach, a human-centered design approach of working alongside communities to solve problems.
Right, not the voice from above. It says, here's the solution, young man.
Yeah,
right?
no, that's exactly it. And that work where, one of his students, instead of working for Amazon, would reject that job offer and move to Manila to start an AI company.
Yeah.
Or instead of, being an investment banker in New York, they would move to Quezon City to start a family business or help a family business. Yeah. Those conversations caught the attention of the Philippine ambassador to the U.S.
Joey Quisha.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Ambassador Quisha at the time. And so I had dinner with him, telling him about my experience and my dreams for the Philippines. And then that dinner was where he started to really formulate what would begin the clear articulation of the particular value we would provide for the Philippines. And he said, Roland, you're doing entrepreneurship and you're a technology person in California.
Yeah.
But when you come to the Philippines, you're doing mostly NGO work and nonprofit work.
Yeah.
And, he said, what if, with all the digital transformation that's happening in the Philippines, with the internet infrastructure.
This was circa 20...
That was 2016.
2016, okay.
Was the dinner.
Yeah.
And then 2017 was when that dinner, I was like, okay, so actually let me back up. So 2016, we have that dinner. I call phone Rexy. I was like, yo, I just had dinner with Ambassador Quisha.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? And he's like, yeah, you know what? With all the nonprofit work I've been doing, what if we actually started a business in the Philippines, and then the jobs that we create in the Philippines, maybe that's how we give back. And
that's
so
awesome.
That really formed the foundation of why we wanted to start Kumu in the first place.
And so what was the first iteration of Kumu? What was the first thing you were trying to do?
Yeah, so for any entrepreneur, you're looking for a product market fit. And so when studying the market or the Philippine total addressable market, one was, okay, you have a market of at least 100 million people with Gen Z, millennial, median age. 2, there's billions of dollars being spent on internet infrastructure. And 3, Chinese smartphone manufacturers were creating basically iPhone 7s for $100, which altogether is a perfect storm for a mobile internet. So there's going to be a lot of problems to be solved within that particular layer. So then we started looking at other markets that took advantage of that perfect storm in other markets. We saw what Tencent did with WeChat in China.
Yeah.
We saw Kakao Corporation building this multi-billion-dollar app ecosystem in Korea.
Yeah.
And then what really inspired us was VNG Corporation in Vietnam. So we're like, okay. And the one of the go-to products that they had was a messenger app. So we did launch this messenger app, Kumu, short for Kumusta or How Are You?
Yeah.
And it was a pretty big...
It was pretty what?
A lot of people just thought it was a crappy Viber. And it kind of sucked because we were halfway through our funds.
I guess they could say, well, yeah, there already exists a messenger app for the Philippines. It's called Viber.
Yeah, that's
called WhatsApp.
That's exactly it. We thought that a localized approach to messaging would be enough, but the network effects of the messengers were already well entrenched in the market.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening though is we noticed that there was a small cohort of users in the background who were actually using a feature that wasn't even the core part of the app, and that was live streaming. Yeah.
So that was the epiphany.
The epiphany comes from, and this is one of the things that's important for Kumu's culture. It was actually one of our interns who brought it up.
Yeah.
Mika Reyes,
Mika,
shout out.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're so super proud of her. She's in the middle of
working on
fundraising.
something right now, right?
Yeah, she's
Parallax,
fundraising.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And she brought it up. She was looking at the data and said, guys, like there's a small cohort of users who are live streaming on Kumu. They're not using the messenger part.
Yeah.
Like there's something here. Can we investigate this? And for anyone trying to seek product market fit, you have to talk to your users.
Yeah.
And so we picked up the phone and started talking to them. And they were like, oh, yeah, I love live streaming. There's this real, raw, and authentic nature of live streaming. I'm not pretending my life is perfect on social media. I'm not hiding behind a keyboard and engaging in toxic behaviors. There's something real, raw, and authentic about live streaming. And so, yeah, just super grateful for Mika to helping us because those insights gave us the confidence to pivot into live streaming, which is where most of our
let's talk
growth
about
has
that
been.
pivot, right? Because there comes a moment where you hit sort of a fork, and you're going to have to make a bet. Right?
Yes.
So tell me about that bet. So having seen this, thing in the data that said live stream is the way to go. I mean, was that an easy decision, or did you agonize over that?
Well, that one was, it was somewhat agonizing because, again, you only have 6 months of runway left.
Yeah.
And we're trying to get some sort of traction around this thesis of building a consumer social business on top of the Philippine total addressable market. So with 6 months left to go, we're already 6 months into, beta was February. We pivoted in so we're 6 months in.
Yeah.
And so, because we raised enough for 1 year. And so...
Who were the early investors? Is that you guys?
Yeah, it was
friends and family,
my
right?
friends and family.
Yeah.
And then Liza Golkongwei with her personal check.
That's right. Okay.
And
so 6 months of life. Okay.
Yeah, with 6 months of life left. And we did look at a particular pivot that was also mostly messenger and check-in related. It was an app called Bourbon. Really great team, really awesome product. But, people are like, oh, I don't get it. It's like a messenger meets like, one of those check-in apps, whatever the case may be. And they were looking at their data and they saw that most of the there was a cohort of users that were utilizing the photo sharing and photo editing function of the app.
Yeah.
And so they were about to run out of money too, but they said, you know what? No one likes that messenger part that we built the app for, but everyone's photo sharing, photo editing.
Yeah.
They decide to pivot to becoming a photo sharing, photo editing app. They changed their name to Instagram.
Yeah.
And then the app really grows. So we got a lot of confidence around looking at those data layers and talking to your users and say, okay, well, if Instagram was able to pivot from a messenger capacity to photo sharing, why don't we just at least make that bet into live streaming? And in August 2018, when we pivoted to becoming a live streaming app.
Okay, so let's talk about that idea. So what is the core idea, right, with this live streaming platform? How do you talk about that?
Yeah, so when building product market fit, it's that aha moment.
Yeah.
The aha moment of where people say, oh, okay, this is what makes our product special. And the aha moment for us, specifically watching around 420 seconds of content on average within the first 24 hours of creating an account so that you could spend 1.5 hours on Kumu within the first 28 days is this authentic connection. Authentic connection and then authentic community to build around it. So let's first talk about authentic connection. So when you look at the product, we talked about what Mika was talking about, real, raw, and authentic experiences of creating live stream content live.
Yeah.
There's no pretending. But then what made the connection even tighter is on the viewer side.
Yeah.
Viewers aren't recognizing the content with a view or recognizing content with a like. If you like the content, you actually send them a virtual gift or a microtransaction in real time. So it's like a digital version of busking, like street performance.
Right.
And being able to do that digitally to recognize content on top of this layer of these core values around safety, positivity, acceptance, we created an environment for authentic connection and authentic communities to form around. And we basically are developing the product around that authentic connection and to really grow that business. And
you're doing something as well in the process, right? You are allowing individuals in the Philippines to make a living.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. It was because of that business model We have around 1,500 content creators who earn a full-time income on the app.
Yeah.
About 10,000 who earn an income part-time.
Yeah.
Who mostly getting support from the Filipino diaspora. So Filipino Americans, Canadians, Australians who are sending those gifts. So we're actually already utilizing a behavior that's well known, which is, the billions of dollars that are sent back home through remittances. But what we've been able to do is create authentic communities and authentic connections digitally through connecting, global Filipinos who are supporting these content creators back home.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Talk about the community a little bit, because I know it's an incredibly strong community. It's a self-policing community.
Yeah.
It's it's also kind of squeaky clean, right? This is a
Yes.
You
can't even curse on the app.
No abuse, no politics kind of place, right?
Yeah. That was a heart-wrenching decision because we knew that because our business model is focused on the generosity of the community.
Yeah.
And one of our biggest differentiators is we were looking at live stream competitors where, if you don't have these content moderation and trust and safety processes in place, live streaming for money can go really dark. You know what I mean? It's just porn and all this stuff and illegal activities. And so we really relied on the community. So we actually created a content moderation growth loop where by having our users being involved in content moderation, we're able to deploy tens of thousands of volunteer content moderators who make sure that the app is safe 24/7, who report offending content to our Kumu police force who are in the community.
Oh, that's cool. That's so cool.
And then broken up into barangays, and they have these 24/7 kind of beats. We're really proud of the fact that we do shut down offending content within 58 seconds.
That's amazing.
Which is
a completely different model, and I must say much more cost effective than the YouTubes and the Googles of the world, right? You have all these
ironically
BPOs, right, in the Philippines.
Yeah, ironically they have thousands of employees in the Philippines.
That's right.
Doing content moderation.
So which kinds of content tend to be the most popular? Is it the singing? Is it the discussions?
So social entertainment, on the entertainment side, it's singing, pop culture, and sports.
Yeah.
In singing, that's a well-known thing about our market.
Yeah.
Just so much singing.
That's right.
So much singing. And from a pop culture perspective, we've been really seeing things like cultural entertainment. So we've been working with influencers, folks from all across the board. And then in sports, really identifying communities like the volleyball community. Specifically the female volleyball community has just been really great for us.
So let's switch gears a little bit into the scale-up part, right?
Yeah.
So you have your product market fit.
Yes.
Flywheels beginning to move, right?
Sure.
If ever so slowly. How did you then turbocharge this thing, right? Both in terms of raising the money you needed, as well as rethinking the organization that you needed to push this thing forward.
Yes. So in terms of that, our flywheel or our growth loop is really around content and really defining what that content is, because content creates the communities. Well, actually, it's almost like the 3 C's, it's like really the content and then the community and then the commerce you build on top of those communities. And so from a content perspective, we have 3 layers. We have PGC, which is professional generated content, PUGC, which is professional user generated content, and then there's UGC, which is user generated content. Okay. So when I walk you through the flywheel, it's like, okay, from the PGC layer, a lot of people have known us for example, we took a Big Brother television concept that was something very popular with ABS-CBN. So that's professionally generated content where we have IP that generates a lot of downloads for the app. Yeah. When you generate a lot of downloads for the app, we have to get that particular user to watch at least 420 seconds of content within the first 24 hours. And from there, there's a certain percentage of those users who say, oh, wow, they discovered the user-generated content piece of creating content and getting paid for doing that. So that's the user-generated content. And then from there, our talent and creative development teams then recruit them to join the Kumu Creator Academy or There's many talent agencies who have built full-time businesses on top of the app. They recruit those user-generated content creators, and they become professional user-generated content creators who go through a training system and those types of things.
Right.
And then from there, they become famous enough to get right into the PGC. They'll get into the PBB house.
Yeah.
They'll star in a movie. We were recently the #2 movie on Netflix a couple weeks ago. That was pretty cool.
Which movie?
It's called Love at First Stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should watch it. Direct Kathy Garcia. She was really inspired by Kumu during the pandemic.
Right.
And her movie, she's well known. Her last movie before that was Hello, Love, Goodbye.
Yeah.
So this is her most recent one, and it debuted top 10. And then we were watching it. We were number 10, then number 8, number 6, number 2. But then Emma Roberts still held on to that number 1 as a movie called The Hunt that we couldn't think. But for the longest time, I mean, it's just such a cool use case. And how we're able to fund that, that's professional generated content, is we created contests. Whoever receives these most virtual gifts gets roles in the movie.
Oh my gosh.
So we had like so one of the love teams, soundtracks, those types of things.
Yeah.
And the revenue generated from that helped us offset the cost of producing a feature-length film that ended up becoming one of the top movies on Netflix. Yeah. So that's kind of like how that wheel goes. And because of that movie, it generates more downloads, and then it just goes like this, like this.
So all of this stuff costs money, right?
Yes.
To do this well and to do this at scale. So let's go back to this question of scaling up, man, and the fundraising part of it, right? I mean, I do remember that you guys raised the Series B. Right? How did that happen? How difficult was that? And then several months later, the first Series C in the Philippines with a extremely prestigious venture capital company. Right? Maybe talk a little bit about that
I mean,
part
when
of
it comes
scaling.
to institutional investment, those are one of those things where you really have to stick to your guns and just focus on community. I remember when we were in 2017, when thinking about fundraising, we had a community app. And at the time, ICOs were all the rage, and people were saying, "Oh, why not instead of fundraising with venture capital, you can do ICOs?" But no, we just decided let's not. My mom taught me this thing that I still remind myself. She always says, "Never take shortcuts." Yeah. Or actually, sorry, no shortcuts. I still hear her head, "No shortcuts, no shortcuts, no shortcuts," and it just felt like a shortcut at the time. Yeah. So we said, let's just go down that hard path of building a product that has some product market fit that can get the attention of some investors. Yeah. And so at the time, Kurt Tanyu from Open Space Ventures had met us when we were still just a messenger app. He was pretty impressed with the team. He really loved our long-term vision of building this technology company, prioritizing the Philippine TAM. But he noticed that we were way off on metrics. Yeah. But one thing that we were really grateful for him was he gave us metrics to hit for, like, can you get to $1 million a month or $1 million a year in revenue, show some product market fit, and a growing monthly active user base. Yeah. And it was through that coaching that we met the partner Hyun, and he said, guys, if this is entertainment, you need someone to just supercharge it. Yeah. You need to get one of those media conglomerates to be a supporter. And then what happened was 60 days after that conversation, we came back with an investment offer from ABS-CBN. Yeah. And then that was when Hyun was like, okay, these guys are legit. Yeah. I'm going to help start you guys. And then he joined with ABS. It was the first ever pre-Series A round that they've ever done in Open Space. But they had some conviction that with the involvement of ABS-CBN, they could help push us to getting to our Series A metrics. And so,
because Hyun had some success of his own, right? Launching a food channel.
Yes.
In Singapore.
He was really, he had expressed a desire to be a part of a media business because, one thing that we loved about Open Space was when they funded Gojek, it wasn't even an app yet. It was a call center. Okay. And when they led their Series A, they helped them pivot from call center to becoming the largest consumer internet app in Indonesia. Yeah. And so when they were investing in us, there's a lot of hopes and experiences that from what they learned from Gojek that they could help us be a consumer internet champion in the Philippines.
The next round
was
right.
Yes.
Talk about the next round, because that was kind of a sort of a hallmark event, right? In Philippine internet.
It was around that time, so we started to grow. And then we met Akshay. We actually, that was a very competitive round. I remember we started getting a lot of traction. It was the first time we were hitting the number one in the Google and Apple app stores. And one thing that we really appreciated Akshay was just his understanding. So he comes from SIG.
That's right.
SIG is this another legendary firm. Their biggest bet I remember was when they funded Yang Jimin.
That's right.
3 times.
Yeah.
So Yang Jimin had an idea, didn't work out, but they really impressed with him. He had another idea.
Yeah.
Really impressed him, didn't work out. The third one was ByteDance.
Yeah.
And from that, being the first ever institutional investor in Yang Jimin, that initial $3 million to where TikTok is today, their SIG's investment is now worth like over $40 or $50 billion.
Yeah.
It's one of the most legendary investments they've ever made.
That's right.
And I think not just with ByteDance, I think SIG's experience funding and helping scale multiple social and media entertainment unicorns all around the world, we just knew that in our hearts, when looking at all the other Series B term sheets, that they would be someone who could help us get to that particular scale.
Yeah. Terrific.
Yeah.
Then you grew, and this was a surprise, right? Within less than a year, there was a Series C. First time ever in the Philippines, right? With the first investment ever by General Atlantic in a Philippine company.
Yeah, and that was actually, going back to Endeavor, Alan Taylor was the one who was guiding us through a lot of the things, because there was a situation where General Atlantic was actually thinking of writing its smallest check ever at the Series B thing, but it probably would have been too dilutive. And Alan was really coaching us through the framing of the conversations and the narrative, and saying like, look,
I remember that he was on holiday.
Yeah, he was on holiday.
He had to sneak out of the house because he didn't want to wake up his wife.
it was the craziest thing. Yeah, we woke him up because of the time difference. It was way past midnight.
Yeah.
And just really helping us guide the conversation, say, look, this is not a no, this is like a let's explore this later. So General Atlantic actually got really familiar with the business already at the Series B stage. So maybe that's one of the reasons why it was so close to each other. And so, the pandemic had helped supercharge our growth, that there was a lot of confidence that with what we've been learning around our content bets and our ability to build communities around that, that, General Atlantic, that was one of, there were some implications about that, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because this is going to be their first ever investment in the Philippines.
Yeah.
And we had this idea that if we end up going down this path, it's not going to help Kumu, it might actually help supercharge the entire Philippine tech ecosystem.
That's right.
And so we just knew we just had to do it right. So always erring on the side of just being completely open with our books, sharing every single thing, no stone unturned.
Yeah.
And,
no shortcuts.
No shortcuts. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And they're for a long-term vision, another thing is we want to be IPO-able. That's something that we shared with Endeavor.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we're going to IPO. Doesn't mean we're going to exit. We just want to be IPO-able, because the implication is we built a world-class company with the best team who understands how to execute, do strategy, have the right timing. And to be world-class, we knew that General Atlantic, with its long history, I mean, we're the 4th ever social app they've ever invested in. The first one was Facebook. Second was Snapchat. Third is ByteDance. And we're the 4th. They've also invested in Uber, Airbnb.
That's a good company to be keeping there.
Yeah, so it was just, we just knew that with their long history of really helping companies IPO, that this was a firm that could help us get to that kind of world-class state. Yeah.
And so one of the things that happens right in the scale-up journey, when you start bringing in these growth investors with all these experiences, they kind of push you, right, to be bigger and better. And I'm sure something happened right on the talent side where you were forced to sort of look at what you had and with your expansion, think about, well, who else do we need to bring this to the next level? Talk about that a little bit, and then I think we'll end up with a little discussion on paying it forward.
Awesome. Yeah, it's this whole concept that going from 0 to 1 is a lot different from going from 1 to 100.
Yeah.
So processes have to change. Team has to level up. A lot of things just, it's just a completely different business in terms of scaling up rather than starting up. And there was a co-founder who ironically, we still work with because he's helping us with our multi-app strategy. But I think that there comes a time where, people who are at 0 to 1 aren't those people who are at 1 to 100.
Yeah.
And by doing that, we actually had to really take a hard look at the rest of the team to either level up, really scaling the business where, pre-pandemic, we were 50 employees, and going from 50 employees to over 500 employees in a year and a half.
Wow, that's
without
crazy.
an office,
Yeah.
With locations in China, Singapore. We have a small office in LA and in Manila, all within a year and a half. It's just a lot of things. So it wasn't just team, but changes in processes.
Yeah.
Bringing in a COO to help define what the Kumu way is. Really tight, data-driven strategy and execution layer with accountability. I think a lot of times from an accountability perspective, we can just kind of go wild with bets. But if there's no casing, there's no data, there's no accountability, it's just really hard to really scale up.
And at that point, I think your perspective shifts as well, right? In terms of the talent pool, you start going from looking who's around me to what's in the world and where can I find the best.
Yes.
Right. I mean, was that something you thought about only after the Series C or Series B? Were you beginning to start recruiting, the best wherever they might happen to live?
Yeah, well, at the Series B, we were always inspired by people who are executing on a high level.
Yeah.
So actually, Endeavor was actually helpful with that because with the network that you have, we were able to get introductions to people who could help coach us and train us. But then as we were taking on consultants to help us grow our business, we started realizing, oh, wow, I think these consultants actually really like our business. Why don't we just send them job offers?
Yeah.
And those types of things. And then it started helping us really say like, wow, this person who helped us grow to say like, or who is helping us solve our business at a $100 million valuation has actually built a business at a $10 billion valuation. You start realizing, it starts stretching you and starting realizing the types of things that you have to do, the internal work required to have that maturity, to have that leadership and those types of things to motivate and coach and find the right peoples in the right seats. Yeah, cool. It's crazy.
Okay, so we'll end today with my favorite topic, right? Which is this whole idea of paying it forward. Because I think it's the most special thing about this very unique and special organization. And it's certainly the reason I chose to join Endeavor, and I'm still at Endeavor, right? It's this ethos of helping the next generation of entrepreneurs become successful, right? Because when you think about our theory of change, right, to use nonprofit speak, our theory of change is you can build an ecosystem when you have entrepreneurs who pay it forward, right? When you have entrepreneurs who mentor others, who invest in others, who inspire others, who share their networks with others. And so I'd like to, talk to you because you guys have certainly been sort of poster boys, right, for this pay it forward entrepreneur.
Really? I didn't know that.
Absolutely. We've actually just created an influence map of the Philippine ecosystem. Right?
Sure.
So you guys are one of the emerging centers of paying it forward. So let's talk about what you have been up to, right, in this regard.
Yeah, so before moving to the Philippines, it was a two-part dream. One was wanted to have a beneficial impact on millions of Filipinos.
Yeah.
Two was this approach of like really mentoring, coaching, investing in 500 purpose-driven leaders. And I felt that I couldn't do that whole mentoring 500 purpose-driven leaders first without actually having to do something first myself, which is looking like what Kumu is turning into.
Yes.
To earn the right to do that. And when I discovered Endeavor and the mission of it, it just really, I remember telling myself, like, look how cool this org is. Like, and you remember we always had this joke.
Oh my God.
Cool enough?
The famous quote, right?
Yeah, I was like...
It was in the match cap, right, in Rockwell.
Yeah, I was telling Rex, I was like, I wonder if we'd ever be cool enough to be in this org. And then he goes... Endeavor, he's like, I used to work there. He used to tell me that he used to work there. And then he would tell me about this org. And, because, he was also at Ashoka and other places too. And it was just something that really resonated with me and this whole concept of paying it forward. And so, I think that even during the earliest stages, we did have Endeavor entrepreneurs who helped us out.
Yeah.
Ron Ros specifically at Coins.
Yeah.
And I a lot of mentors I do remember, and I think that now that it's our turn, well, not really our turn. I think anytime someone ever asked us a question, when we raised our Series A, there were some people that wanted to help us Series B, but for some reason that Series C level, a lot of the back channel conversations, because if you look at our cap table, right, you have Ayala, Gokongwei, C, Foxmont, Core Capital, Open Space, Open Space, SIG, and General Atlantic,
and Endeavor Catalyst,
and also an Endeavor Catalyst, which I ended up being an investor in. And I just think that anytime someone invests or wants to invest, an investor is asking us about that company, and then we're utilizing from an entrepreneurial perspective back channel conversation to really help coach and train and help startups actually be investable, or advising them on how to talk to these investors and those types of things, or with some from some startups, helping them on operations, those types of things. So
we actually did a study some years ago. There was an article that came out in TechCrunch by Rhett Morris of Endeavor Insight, and and they were studying the New York entrepreneur ecosystem, and they looked at who were the most successful entrepreneurs. And as it turns out, the most successful were 3 times more likely to have a successful mentor, than those who are not successful, right? So it really underscores the importance of having a mentor, right? A successful mentor in your life. If you were just starting out, right, then you're shy and you don't feel worthy of approaching a successful person. What advice would you give them? Like this, because I'm sure a bunch of people over time have approached you and Rexy for advice, right?
Sure.
But it must have taken quite a bit for them to, sort of take that leap and, be in the presence of gods.
The one thing is, it's actually what's more important than the first meeting.
Yeah.
It's what you show in the second. And then that helps you filter out whether you want to spend more time with that person or not.
Yeah.
Like, for example, in the case of Hyun, he said, all right, boys, you guys seem, really excited by what you do. And then he had a suggestion, maybe get like a media conglomerate who wants to invest. And then 60 days later, we had an investment offer from ABS CBN. And that's the same thing. Like, when I look at the people that we have mentored, the ones I spend the most time with are the ones that after that first initial, because sometimes getting that first initial is super hard, but don't be shy, because it's a lot easier to get that first meeting than the follow-up.
Yeah.
So in that first meeting, you really got to do whatever it takes to get that first meeting. But the fastest way to waste that first meeting is not taking advantage of the follow-up to show the result. And so, just thinking about a lot of the times, one of our best mentors that we've had from a tech perspective, I remember, was Stephanie C. over at Thinking Machines.
That's right.
And when we meet with her, we take all this advice that she's telling us. Yeah. We write it all down, down, and says, boom, this is what we did with what you said. Yeah. And then from that, she spends more time with us.
That's amazing. That's very good advice.
Those types of things. And it's just really important. So, like, for example, when one person who's been taking so much is Ron Beitong over at Podcast Network. Yeah. So much so I just ended up just investing in him, and those types of things. And my gosh, when he follows up, he's just like, look, this is what I did, this is what I did, this is what I did. And we go, and those types of things. Yeah. Or like one of the most intentional people I've ever met, Bella over at Edamama. Yeah. I remember when it was our first meeting, she had this idea. Yeah, I remember it was right outside BGC. She was telling us about Edamama and those types of things, and really giving her advice on our experience with our investors. Yeah, and those types of things, and then how precise she was with our feedback and getting what she wanted. Yeah, and if you look at her investment table, it's very similar to our investors. That's right. You know what I mean? And it's those types of conversations where you pay it forward, because someone like Bella, who's like super intentional and very precise and knows what she wants. of all the entrepreneurs, she's one of the ones that I respect the most, and just so proud of what she's been able to do in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
You know, I think when spending time with people, it's that first one's important, but it's just like, what do you do with that information in the second?
Yeah.
I remember Lista. It's a Series A startup that I invested in, and just the way that he follows up and the way that he actually applies that information. There's just a lot of different examples, but the ones that I've seen who have really been utilizing that second meeting the most are the ones who just take up most of my time.
Yeah.
And the ones who just don't follow up, or they're just going nowhere, that's
right.
Yeah.
That's right. So investments, right? Because you mentioned Lista. How methodical or intentional are you in these investments? Like, what's your playbook? Because you've invested in a bunch, right?
Like 5 right now. Not too much. It's because I'm not nowhere near. I haven't exited yet or anything. Small angel checks. I do hope in the future. I do see myself in that fund capacity to help really turbocharge that 500 purpose-driven leader vision. But it all goes back to our first advisor, Dado Banato.
Yeah.
When Dado talked about, before you fund, here are the 4 key areas before we fund.
Yeah.
What is your technological advantage?
Yeah.
What is your operating plan or go-to-market plan?
Mm-hmm.
And then these last 2 key areas, what is your team? Who are the natural engineers? Who are the natural problem solvers? Is this the team that can actually do it? And then the most important is timing.
Yeah, that's right.
So I go through this kind of criteria of the 4 key things that Dado taught us before we even have the funding conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
So just deep dive into the tech advantage, the go-to-market plan, team, and timing. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's end with your new baby, right? You have a new baby, and it's based on a Philippine dish, right? Sinigang Valley.
Oh,
Let's talk
yes.
about that.
Wow.
Because that's a real jolt of mojo, I think, into the ecosystem, right? So kudos to you and Rexy. So maybe let's spend a few minutes just talking about that and what you hope to see evolve over time.
Yeah, Sinigang Valley is, something that Linda actually inspired me with was...
Linda Rodenberg.
Yes, over at Endeavor. She's just one of the most dynamic leaders I've ever met.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how ecosystems are turning a corner in both Mexico and in the Philippines.
Yeah.
And she was talking about this whole concept of big fish eating little fish and those types of things, and seeing that shift. And when she said something about ecosystem turning the corner, I started realizing that our community should be turning a corner as well.
Yeah.
And I'll always be grateful for previous iterations and generations of the startup communities.
Yeah.
But I did notice that maybe, especially at the Series A plus world, there's like so many more now than there were 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But there hasn't really been that kind of intentional way for all of us to kind of come together in a way.
Yeah.
And so thinking about it, my experience when I was in San Francisco and exposed to Silicon Valley when we sold our startup, and then prior to starting Kumu, spending 10 years in Santa Monica area and being exposed to Silicon Beach, I started really thinking about like one particular dinner I remember in Silicon Valley. There was a blog that was covering us. Mike Arrington? He had a blog, TechCrunch, and he had this dinner, and there was this dinner, and at that dinner it was like Sean Parker, Mark Zuckerberg, blah blah, and everyone, I think almost half that table used to work together at PayPal. Even I think Reid Hoffman was there. It was just the craziest dinner, and we were at that dinner, but to be completely honest, we like snuck into that dinner just to be exposed and be a part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And to see the network effect of the power of a company of like PayPal. Oh, one of the reasons why we knew that was because our first advisors, Luke and Kenny, were co-founders of PayPal. They went to Stanford with Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
And so they founded PayPal, and then after they sold it, they had created a venture capital fund called Founders Fund.
Yeah.
So being exposed to that in Silicon Valley, it wasn't just Silicon Valley, but it was a particular community inside this region called Silicon Valley. And so for Sinigang Valley, I wanted to really create something similar to, not really create, steward is the word.
Yeah.
A community of high performing folks all across the board, whether on the enabling side, whether it's on the investment side, even like on the legal side, and all the top startups and all, and just putting them all together in the same room and seeing what type of magic can happen, similar to like what I saw on that dinner table in Silicon Valley. Because it was crazy. I didn't even realize how important that dinner was.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't realize it until now that I'm talking to you. Because I remember it was a long table, 30 people. But imagine in that 30 people, it was like Mark Zuckerberg, Sean Parker, Peter Thiel, Reid Hoff. It was just a crazy dinner that was hosted by TechCrunch.
It was Mount Olympus.
Yeah, it was crazy. And so I was just thinking about what would happen if we brought everyone together and helped on this vision of really helping the tech ecosystem. Wow.
Exciting, man. Exciting. Well, I see that Chelsea's waving the Time's Up flag, but I think what a great way to end, right? I mean, there's so much promise in this ecosystem. We are beginning to see this flywheel begin to move, and you guys are at the front of this, right? And I'll just end by saying, you know what? You are a true, what we call 3M entrepreneur.
Oh,
Magaling.
Oh, thank you.
Matino. Mapagbigay, right? With emphasis on the mapagbigay, the generous bit. So thank you for your generosity. Thank you for spending time today, man, a whole hour with us here.
No problem.
In our little makeshift podcast studio. That was Roland Ros, co-founder and CEO of Kumu, the largest social entertainment app in the Philippines. Thank you so much for listening to this second episode of the show. If you want to connect with us, our email is hello@endeavor.org.ph, and you can also find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. This show was produced by Endeavor Philippines. I'm Manny Ayala, and you've been listening to HIPE Stories. We'd like to thank the Asbury for our studio. The Asbury is a private members club in Poblacion, where the creative and cerebral live in the moment and work, gather, grow for tomorrow. To know more, come find them at astbury.club. Again, that's Astbury, ASTBURY.club. Thank you again to our friends from the Asbury.